Hi there. My name is Tasha Van Howe. I'm the author of Miss Me Always. We are here today at the Arvida Book Co. here in downtown Tustin, the cutest and most adorable independent bookstore that there ever was. And it is on the corner with this awesome patio that we're sitting on today. I am here with the Bunk House Book Tour. And to my left is Sharon Leino, and to my right is Lisa Perron. And we are the Bunk House Book Tour. I have written a book, again, it's called Miss Me Always. It is a nonfiction. It is not a memoir. However, it is about the love story between my husband and I. We have struggled for many years trying to start a family. And through the journey of IVF and the loss of our son and donor eggs and a scandalous adoption that'll blow your mind, we have been able to persevere and come out stronger in the end and more in love. And this is our love story. We have been together since high school, and I decided to put words on paper so that other people who struggle or are currently struggling or have had loss can read these words and maybe not feel so alone. Lisa?
Yes, my name is Lisa Perron. I wrote the book Reluctant Killer. This is a suspense novel. When I started to write the book, I wanted to, I normally write character-based stories, and but I read mostly thriller, suspense, and most of them are more plot focused. So my goal was to write a character-based suspense. So this is about a woman named Catherine, who, when she grew up a preacher's daughter, and when she was about 22 years old, her father murdered her mother. And so she ran from her little town in West Virginia to a bigger town in West Virginia to escape, just kind of leave all that world behind her. And eventually she met her husband. And after they were married about 3 years, he wakes her up in the middle of the night and says, "They found me," and hands her a gun, tells her to hide in the closet, and said, "If anyone gets past me, you have to take care of them." And so here she is. She has no idea who her husband is, and she ends up having to shoot an intruder that night. So it's the story of her trying to come to terms with the life that she has always known as being good and bad, black and white, that life really isn't like that. And so she seeks out to discover who her husband is, and in order to face all of that, she has to also face her past. So, Sharon?
I'm Sharon Leino, and I wrote the book Scaredy, and Wandering Years is book 2. Scaredy is about a little boy named Rudy, who's 10 years old, who is afraid of everything. He goes into a fantasy world with his friend Billy, and in that world they meet a lot of different characters, and they try and help that world overcome the thinking that has gone wrong because of an evil wizard. The thinking is good is evil and evil is good. And so they battle all kinds of creatures, and you'll have to read the book to find out the end. But the reason I named it Scaredy is because I understand the feelings of children that are fearful and timid. As a young child, I was taller than anyone in the first, second, and probably third grade, and I was very, very skinny. And for those parents who have watched some cartoons, old cartoons, there's a character called Olive Oil in there, and that's what I was called. And so I was able to write those feelings down. The reason I had Scaredy go into a fantasy world is because children use imagination to solve problems. And this is just to encourage that imagination growth.
something.
So tell me, when did you start writing?
I started writing when I was 50, when I was young, and first retired with my husband.
3 years ago, right?
Yeah, right.
Okay.
And when we retired in Texas, and I thought I was too young to retire, and I'm a work-oriented person. And so I thought, I've got to do something. There's too many old people around here. So I joined writing groups. But then my husband shortly became blind, and I put my writing away, and we developed a new lifestyle, and we continued to have wonderful retirement years. And I didn't pick up writing for a long time.
What made you decide to start writing again? I mean, you stopped, but then you went back to it. Did something inspire you, or something happen for you to do that?
What happened was my husband died 4 years ago. And after being a caregiver, it was like, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? Because it was quite empty with him gone. And a friend of mine from Texas, Beverly Gustafson, who is now in heaven, sent me an invitation to a writer's retreat at Richard Paul Evans Ranch. So I thought, well, I only have a week to decide. I only have a week to get an airplane ticket. And I only have a week to see if he'll accept my invitation. And so that's what I did.
So I actually just learned that about you last night, that you joined the writer's retreat a week before you had to make the decision. But Lisa and I were actually part of the original OG group.
I know. I can't believe it. I'd never heard of it. I never heard of the OG group.
Well, we kind of named ourselves that, but we are the originals. I mean, Richard Paul Evans, he is this New York Times bestselling author. Every year he comes out with a Christmas story, and I got to say, I've probably for the last 15 or 20 years, which definitely ages me at the moment, I have read his stories every year when it comes out. It's somewhat of my holiday tradition. And he posted on his social media that he was looking for 100 people to mentor if they had a story in them, but you had to apply and sort of get chosen. You couldn't just join at the whim of, right, like at the whim. So that's what I did, and I became one of the OG original 100 people, and so did Lisa.
Yes.
You also found it on social media?
Yeah, because I've followed Richard Paul Evans for years. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so.
Okay, so then you and I, we just found out. So Lisa and I were part of that group where we were on Zoom meetings with Richard, and he would mentor us, he would coach us. There were steps, there were things that we talked about, we could ask questions, and he would kind of guide us through the writing process up until publish process. Yeah. And then even by the time we got to the retreat, we were into like marketing.
Yeah. So after 2 years of friendship, of talking often and daily, I find out a new secret. I'm not an OG.
Do you know what OG stands for?
Original.
Girl, you gangster. Yes, that's right. OG stands for original. So, yeah, that's interesting. So, we all met through that way. I will tell you that's how we met, which is what brings us to the Bunkhouse book tour, because we all flew into Vegas. Both Lisa and Sharon are from Florida, and I'm from here in California. And we flew into Vegas and hopped in a van to drive 4 hours into Utah, to where the ranch was, where the writer's retreat was held at a ranch. And from the moment we got in the car, we were laughing and joking as if we had known each other for years. We were even making fun of each other before, like, we left the parking lot of the airport. Yes. And I thought, these are my people.
Yeah, for sure.
Right? Especially you. Like, she can be mean.
Oh, now look at this face.
Don't let it fool you,
Lisa. No.
Don't let it fool you. And we spent 4 hours driving that first night into Utah with each other. And when we arrived at the ranch, we ended up being roommates in a bunkhouse on the ranch.
Yes.
And since then, it has been non-stop shenanigans. I tell you, we went back for a second retreat, actually, just this past summer.
Yeah.
And Richard called us the troublemakers.
So.
He might not be wrong.
Yeah, they asked us that when we arrived how long we'd been friends, and we're like, 4 hours. So, yeah.
I also like it because of just the genres are different. You know,
Yeah.
you wrote a children's book. I wrote like a heart gut-wrenching nonfiction where I love my husband, and then you wrote a thriller about like she might want to kill her husband.
Yeah, right. Yeah. See?
Yeah,
So
it
it's
goes
all
like-
different.
Yes, but also our age differences, and you know, here we are in California, and I was starting to put together everything, and I was putting Sharon's flight together, and I was getting her information, and she gave me her birthday, and as I was typing it in, I said, Sharon, are you here on your 80th birthday? And she goes, well, gosh darn it, I wasn't going to tell you. And I said, oh my gosh, you're going to be celebrating your 80th in California. We're going to make a big deal. And that is what we've been doing.
Yes.
I didn't know they meant every single night.
Yes.
Oh, it's happening.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, if I could, I would have put a crown on her head.
Yeah, I wanted to get a sash.
A sash,
but-
yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
so
I mean, it's not too late.
that's true. That's true. We still have a few more days.
Sharon, you're my hero. You're writing books.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, let me tell you, she's on social media. She's she doesn't always get the names right. So, you know, we got to figure it out. Like for the, you know, at the retreat, she was calling Instagram Toastagram. You can hashtag that out. It's fine. Toastagram is what it is. I mean, and then I TikTok, I don't even know what you call it sometimes. And that's fine. We know exactly what you're talking about. But
That's
you
right.
were on it, Sharon, and you
That's
were
right.
doing it.
She's learning video editing
Yes.
and all this stuff. So
Yes.
she is
But I have two great friends that help me out because these are Tasha will get on my Instagram and she'll correct all the spelling and all the mistakes that I've made. And then I call Lisa up and I go, Lisa, I just don't understand how you do this. And she'll tell me step by step. And it's wonderful because there doesn't seem to be an age difference.
no.
Unless
No.
I
We're
forget
just-
things. But, you know, other than that, it's just wonderful. And we learn really from each other.
Absolutely.
And Lisa and Tasha are excellent writers. They have the editing, the formatting. They know how to pick a book cover. And I can't say enough about their books because they are excellent. And
She's our biggest fan.
For sure.
Sometimes she's telling people about our books, and we're like, "Hey, you wrote one too. You should tell them about your book."
Yeah.
Right?
Right, exactly.
But I will say, I'm impressed because I don't know if I'm going to be that way at 80. You flew out to California, and you're on a book tour because you just wrote a book, and 2 books, and while we're out here, you were doing social media as if you were, you know, a 25-something-year-old person, video
Not really.
editing and walking around, and I think it's impressive. I hope I'm there when I'm 80.
Yeah, absolutely. Goals.
Yeah,
Hashtag,
hashtag
goals.
What can we hashtag your name, Sharon?
Oh, Toastagram.
That's right.
Oh, Carnarva.
Yeah,
Oh,
Carvana.
Carvana. She
She
said
said-
she was doing her social media editing on Carvana, and I said, you know, I'm pretty sure that's the vending machine for cars. I think you're speaking of Canva, but that's all right. We figured it out.
That's right. Exactly.
We know exactly what you're
Yes.
talking about.
And it works. But I think we should get back to what your books are about. Lisa, is that your first book?
Actually, it's not. It's my 4th book. I self-published. My first novel was called Among the Reeds. I have 5 children. 3 of them are adopted, 2 homemade. And when my oldest daughter was about 7 years old, she approached me and asked me what was wrong with her that her mother didn't want her. And it just totally broke my heart. And I tried to explain to her that it was out of love and concern for her well-being that her mother chose an adoption plan for her. But when you're 7, you can't understand that, because when you really love something, you hang on to it. You don't let it go. And so the story of Julia started churning in my head at that time, about a birth mother who was faced with a similar decision, and kind of going through all of her reasons for choosing an adoption plan for her child. And so it was years later, it was in my early 40s, I started writing the story in secret for about 3 years. And then I finally told my husband about it, and then he encouraged me to finish that. And then since then, I wrote a book with my husband called When God Said No, and it was about our infertility journey and adoption of our 3 children. And then I wrote a little novella called I Am Cancer. It's about a woman who finds out she only has a few months to live, and so she's trying to right all of her wrongs before she dies. So that's those 3. But this one, I think, is special to me because it's the first chapter was my senior thesis. I went back to school at 47 and got my degree when I turned 50. And the first chapter was my senior thesis. And so I've been, it took me 2 or 3 years to finish writing it. But it was like, okay, now I really have had more skills to write and everything. So I'm very proud of this book. So.
So it took you almost, are you saying 2 to 3 years? So almost, you're at least 2 years. And you said Scaredy took you 2 years.
Yes.
And then Miss Me Always took me 2 years.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if you wouldn't mind reading something out of Miss Me Always. Tasha just published hers. Hers just came out new.
Yes.
Yes.
And she just had her book launch, and what she read there was just exceptional.
I could read the very, very opener.
Okay.
Perhaps the little dear
Sounds good.
A little dear reader. So it just says, Dear Reader, when people hear our story, they often shake their heads in disbelief, and I find myself doing the same. Falling in love with and marrying my high school sweetheart came so naturally, it never occurred to me that starting our family wouldn't. Jeff and I have endured such heartbreak, and living through it will always be the most difficult thing I have had to do. Putting words on paper and writing them down to share with you was just as painful. I had to relive each moment of sadness I worked so hard to heal from. But I was able to relive the happy moments too, and I've written them into the pages of this book. People often ask me if I had to, would I do it again? And the answer is yes, absolutely. However, I would find my voice and do things differently. No one can advocate for you better than you can. Everyone has a story of trial or love. Some have both. Welcome to our story.
Yeah, and Tasha's story, I have to say, oh my goodness, it's her strength and her ability to just, lose it and then pull herself together and move on. I mean, I think that right there is just amazing strength, because I think part of the strength comes from letting yourself feel what you're feeling and acknowledging that at this moment I am really angry at God, and owning that, and then moving, then that kind of gives you the strength to kind of get that release, and then you move on, and you're the queen. You're the queen. For
I'm
sure.
the queen of screaming and crying and throwing things and then going, okay, let me go get my Starbucks.
Yes.
Okay.
And then she starts writing.
And then I start writing. Yes, that's kind of my craft, actually.
Yeah.
I will sit down. Writing Miss Me Always wasn't easy. I wanted to give up many, many times. I cried and called these ladies. I curled up on the bed and cried because I was reliving painful times. But I would push through because I want this book to help others. So that was my craft, right? I would grab Starbucks and then I would sit down and write.
And you already have someone that read your book. And what did she say?
That was very surreal. That was eye-opening for me. Or that my very first person to finish the book after they purchased it was a woman who had lost a child 40 years ago, and She read it in one day, in one sitting, and said that many of the dark thoughts that I have that I've written down were her thoughts as well. And the guilt that I felt was her guilt as well. And it was healing in a sorts, I think, for maybe both of us to realize that we had that connection. And through it all, you know, my husband was so supportive and such a champ that I really felt like I needed to honor our love story as well.
Lisa, yesterday we had another book signing, and a young girl came in and asked about the craft of writing, and you really gave some very good suggestions.
Yeah, I think probably because this was a very difficult thing for me to learn as well, is that, you know, when we write something, we're very proud of it and we think, oh, this is great, you know. And one thing I had to learn when I went back to school was that everything isn't perfect that I write. And I had a few classes where we would read little snippets of what we wrote, and then other people would kind of chime in and, you know, say what they liked about it and give advice. And my biggest piece of advice would be, do not ignore the I don't want to say negative comments, but the feedback. Just because, you know, your writing is your baby, and you don't want, you know, anything to mess with it and all that. Whereas if you really truly want to produce your best work, then you need to listen to that feedback, even if you don't agree. I'm not saying that you need to make the changes that they're suggesting, but at least take it into consideration and maybe alter what you have, or really look at it and say, was this a good idea or was this a bad idea? Because I think, and that's the way to produce your best work, is to get not just the positive, oh, that's great, but I want to hear, you know, I wish that you would have wrote a little more about this. You know?
We did that a lot when we would read to each other. We would always tell each other to expand or this, or I wish I would have done this in this area. And ultimately our stories unfolded that way.
Yeah,
you know, our writing.
It did.
Yeah,
unfolded that
I mean,
way.
in the end, your story is yours, so you don't have to make any changes if you don't want to. But
That's right.
you know,
I would say also for me, when that would happen, I would go, oh my gosh, you're right. Or I didn't think about that.
Right.
Or how many times did we, I don't know, it's like an epiphany, like I was going to do that, and I'm so glad you mentioned that. So
right.
I think that helped a lot too. I mean, luckily, so I would say one thing is to find a writer's group, find local readers or an online source that you can find that support and work with.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. Because that was one of the hardest parts of when I was writing this book before we met, was that I missed that back and forth exchange that I had in college. You know, so I really wanted that feedback. And by giving other people feedback, it's like, oh, wait, I could take my own advice in this area. So it's kind of like by voicing it, it was very affirming. So.
Now, Tasha, you and Lisa publish differently than I do.
That's right. You're so cute when you say, now, Tasha, I feel like I'm on the news.
Hello.
I feel like I'm on the news. I don't know what to do with my hands. So we did. Lisa and I both published, self-published, and you did small press.
Yes.
So, gosh. Okay, so self-publishing for us, for me anyways, I think it's fantastic. Even to just experience the process.
Yeah.
I will say, when my books arrived, they were printed incorrectly, and then I threw things, and then I cried, and then
got Starbucks.
And then came back and figured it out, and everything was okay once I got the right books. So there was that. Other than that, it's exciting to go through that process.
Yeah, it is to kind of see. You see it from the beginning, and then, you know, like the development of the covers, the development of the interior, all of that stuff is very, very exciting.
Which is surprising, because if you're self-publishing, I think people, when they think about writing books, we were talking about this yesterday, they think you just write the book.
Yeah.
But there is so much that goes behind it. There is the cover illustrations, then there's the interior design, all the way down to the page numbers and the font and the size, the paperweight. I mean, I could go on for days, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And you have to figure it all out. Then there's having to get an ISBN number. Where do you get that? How do you do it? It's such a learning experience.
For
So
sure, yeah.
you may have written the book, but there is so much that comes afterwards.
Right.
But it's all exciting.
Yeah, it is. It is. And there's nothing like you getting the book in the mail and opening it up and thumbing through it for the first time.
And
It's
finding out it was printed wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because that was so exciting.
There was nothing like that either.
Such a great experience. So, I would also say part of that experience was every time I called you or I would call you, we would, go, I just did this. And then that excitement behind it, like, that's exciting.
Yeah.
And then, what's next?
Right. Or there's moments when you're like, okay, I'm ready to just be done. I'm like, nope,
Yep.
you come too far to be done. So
when I
it's
got the books back that they were printed wrong, I was done. I was like, I'm going to, scratch everything. I don't want to print. I don't want my launch party. It was a whole thing. You had to walk me off that ledge.
Yep. So you're welcome.
Yep. Thanks. I'll get you a Starbucks.
So Sharon.
But Sharon, you did small press.
I did. I have a series of 4 books I'm writing, and there's so much to learn. Like you say, just in writing, I thought, I surely don't need to learn how to self-publish. Well, in other words, I was just a chicken, that's all. And so I have my sister-in-law who used to be working at a printing press. I asked her about 2 small print publishing companies, because when you have your book, it's like your baby. You're very careful, and you want to make sure that you choose the right press. So I chose Flint Hills Publishing, which is a small printing press, with Thea Rodemacher, the publisher, and I have been extremely happy. She has really walked me through a lot of stuff, has been very patient, it's been a great experience, and I value that. So I will stick with my small press printing.
I would say I'll stick to self-publishing just as long as the books come back correctly.
Right. Yeah.
And then here we are. It all worked out, and we're on this amazing book tour. And Lisa, well, you were here for your book launch a few months ago.
Yes. In November, Tasha, she did a book launch party for me at her house and invited a bunch of her friends, and
That was fun.
and we had like we played a game that was like a cold case, and each table got a file of evidence, and first ones to find enough evidence to reopen the case won a prize, and that was a lot of fun.
I forgot that we did that. I remember you just eating your way through.
Yeah, I did eat. Yeah, that's what I discovered. In-N-Out Burger, and Pink's hot dogs.
And then Sharon's never been to California, and this is her 80th birthday, and you are here for your first time. I think that's amazing. So here we are, Bunkhouse Book Tour, having a really wonderful time. I mean, it's always laughs and trouble. California. Yeah, well, you've lucked out, let me tell you, because I don't know what was happening. They delivered California back because it was gone for a long time. The weather was awful, but it's back, and you can find our books here at Arvida Book Co. Definitely come down in person if you're local, just because it's the cutest place. And I believe we're going to leave some signed copies here, so if you get here quickly, then you can grab those before someone else does. And if not, you're welcome to go to arvidabookco.com. It's behind our head right here, arvidabookco.com, and you can purchase the books there as well. And follow us on social media. Sharon Leino, author, and author Van Howe for myself.
And author Lisa R. Perron for me.
And that's on Toastagram.
Yeah.
And of course, I would get it wrong. I'd go Sharon Leino author instead of author.
I
There's
think
no
it
wrong.
works good.
Yeah,
There's no
wrong or
wrong.
right.
That's right.
So we thank Arvida Book Co. for having us. It's been
Absolutely.
awesome, and it's a beautiful day out here. So we're really lucky. Thank you very
Yes,
much.
we are very grateful. Thank you.